Hi, and welcome back to the Gigcon Summit, the online summit for self-employed people. Now, I guess you figured out by now, we're talking about self-employed. It doesn't mean that you're doing all the work by yourself, but we're talking about people who don't have employees. They may have, a dozen or so subcontractors working with them for them, but they don't have employees. It is actually their company and they're running it their way. And we've had some really great speakers, and our next speaker is no exception. He is an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry, and his company is called the Alpha Entrepreneur. And I'm going to let him explain to you what that really means, because it's a fascinating story that I think has a lot of lessons in it. But help join me in welcoming to the Gigcon Amir Pozderac. Was I close?
Yes, that was really good. I like it. Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Angela. Great to be here. My name is Amir Pozderac. And yes, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And really, through my ups and downs over the years, I realized I was born to be an entrepreneur. So I did have a very few, or rather short, excursion to the employee world. I actually had two jobs in my life. One was like 3 months, the other 4. But all the rest since has been really my business. And it has now evolved what it is today, which is the Alpha Entrepreneur, which is really the online resource, I would say the #1 online resource for successful entrepreneurs who want to get in shape. So we talk about building lean muscle, losing weight, getting in great shape, and how that actually affects your business and life in a very, very positive way. So that's the...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we want to talk with you about is when I discovered Amir, I could see right off the bat that he was a gentleman who knows how to systematize his business. And it just looks very crisp, very clear. The message is very succinct. You know exactly who he's targeting and what he's providing. So let's talk about developing a system as an entrepreneur. Why should an entrepreneur think about systematizing their business from the very beginning?
That's a really good question. And I absolutely do believe that everyone should systematize it. But of course, there are levels to which a certain business needs systematization or not. So for example, I was silly enough to actually go to 2 colleges and get 2 different degrees in 2 different fields. And one of them is pharmacy. The other one was actually a business degree. So in business school, they taught us that, which is actually a very good lesson, that the difference between small business and big business is that small business is people dependent and big business is systems dependent. And usually you can see a perfect example of this if you go to any of the mom and pop shops, like a coffee shop that's been there for 60 years, or like a little pharmacy that's been there for 3 generations throughout the family. You will see that usually there are, let's say, a couple of people that are basically taking the weight of the whole business. And if one of them gets sick, for example, or has an emergency in the family, or something happens, all of a sudden the business can not only really suffer because of that, but a lot of times business can go under because of that, because they are people dependent. So what happens if this one person all of a sudden doesn't show up one day? Now the business is in jeopardy, and you can lose the business that way. On the other hand, if you think about big businesses, for example, AT&T or Verizon or Amazon, imagine what happens if one employee of Amazon doesn't show up to work today. Well, nothing, exactly nothing, because they are replaceable. And it's not to say that a big company has to treat their employees as like little wheels in a system like that have no face or anything else. Not at all. It's really just actually from my experience too, systematizing the business actually empowers the people to do a better job. And we can later talk about how that is the case. But when it comes to scaling up, so for example, this also matters how big a business owner wants to build. So if someone wants to have, let's say, a $50,000 to $100,000 service business where someone is, for example, a coach, and it's enough for them to make $10,000 in revenue per month, the systematization of that business is really not crucial. I would not suggest they focus on systematizing a business that makes $10,000 a month or less. Really, you should really be focusing on only two things. One, getting appointments. Number two, enrolling people into either your programs or selling them, basically sales, right? So you have to lead generate qualified leads, number one, and number two, sell. That's really the two things that a small business should focus on. Once that business passes maybe 50 to 100,000 a month, then you will probably run into challenges if you don't have systems. And at that point, you should really focus on every person in your operation. What is it that they're doing? And then trying to systematize that in a very methodical way. So the best way is to simply ask the person who's really good at what they're doing, ask them, okay, if we have someone off the street who doesn't know anything about what you do, but we want them to be able to do at least 70% a good job as you're doing, what manual would you create for them to do that? And that is the best way. And with this, a lot of people would think that if you say that to your contractor or employee, you're actually going to chase them away because they're going to say, oh, well, what happens if I create this and then they just replace me with someone? I have not found that to be the case. Actually, they feel empowered and important because that also, not only did they create the actual manual, but that allows them to see that over time, as they're doing that same process, they have become so good at it that they want the next step. So they say, hey, I've created this manual. Now I know it inside and out. So what's next? Give me more. And actually, this is one of the greatest lessons I have learned as an entrepreneur and an employer. And that is, if you empower people and trust them to do a good job, they will surprise you more often than not in how good of a job they will do and how well they will do it.
Well, I like what you said about the smaller business being people dependent and the larger ones being system technology more dependent, because that happened to me. I had a consulting group prior to this company, and it was very much people dependent. And then when I was no longer available, things started to fall apart because I had, a serious illness in my family, and things really started to fall apart and get behind because we were just dependent upon more people than anything. So, but it's the first time I've ever heard anybody say it that way.
Yeah, that's a very common, I would say more often than not, even with businesses that are way too big to be people dependent, a lot of times they are. And I always look at it as, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if you want to sell your company or not. A lot of people, let's say you have different types of entrepreneurs, a certain type is just wired in a way that they want to create as big of a company as they can and then just have an exit out, right? So they sell it for however much they can, and they go out and then create another one and another one. And also you have a different type of entrepreneur who says, it doesn't matter how big my company gets, I'll always be a part of it. So for example, Walmart and the founder of it never really wanted to sell it. It stayed within the family. Right? Even when they became multi-billionaires and richest person in America, etc., it doesn't matter. They still didn't want to sell it. So regardless of whether someone wants to sell their business or not, you should always make your business sellable. Always approach your business as if you do want to sell it. And I've learned this lesson a very hard way. I spent a little less than 10 years building a very, I would say, high profit, low hassle, a local business where I had a fitness studio and I worked with people individually with nutrition and other plans, training and nutrition plans and get them in great shape. And it took years and years to build that business. And then once it reached a certain level of income, there was simply no more, because that would mean more hours of my time, which I didn't have. And at that time, I realized that business was really not worth anything because it was fully dependent on me. All of these clients were there for me, not because the business is great, not because my process is great, not because my system is great, because I didn't have any of that. They were there for me. And while that's great for your ego, we really need to say, hey, I don't care about my ego. What am I doing here? So I really had a great business that, if you look at it, God forbid something happened, like illness in a family, some other emergency, or I want to go somewhere for 2 weeks, the business doesn't generate any income because I'm not there. Right. And and if I tried to replace myself with someone else, these people would say, hey, but, we're here for you. We don't want to work with him or her. And after realizing that, I said, okay, my next business and every business after that is absolutely not going to be dependent on me. It's going to be dependent on the
Hey,
process and system.
you're reading my history. You're reading my history completely.
There you go.
But again, you're putting it in such clear words that anybody can understand it. It took me a while to kind of figure out what in the crap is going on
It
here.
usually takes us many years. That's right. Yes.
So let's talk about, the process of building a system. So from your experience, what are some of the struggles that entrepreneurs have as they start out, building their system for scale?
Very good question. There are many struggles, that's for sure. The number one, if we look kind of big picture, let's say if we have a young person, let's say 16 to 18-year-old child, and they just go to college. Usually they choose college based on what their parents want, not what they want. And after they come out of college, now they have some kind of degree, but that absolutely does not have to mean that this person actually loves doing what they just went to college for a lot of times. And so that's the wrong path. That's what we all do usually because we don't know any better. That's how I ended up in pharmacy school and, in business school, which both are awesome, but it's just for me really wasted time because I was born to be an entrepreneur. But it took many years to realize that. So the opposite of that is actually the same principle that we should use when hiring employees and building systems for our businesses. And that is find someone who has a natural talent, number one. And then number two, actually skills and knowledge in the field that you're hiring them for. But the number one thing is really they need to like what they're doing. So, and that will come as a result of these three things. They're naturally talented for that. In this great book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, one of the best business books ever, he says, something like someone's front door is your backyard, something like that. So what he's trying to say is, I don't know the exact quote, but basically he's trying to say is what we suck at, someone else is great at. What we're really amazing at, someone else would never do that to save their life. So that's really the key to success. Not only in your life, you should realize what is your natural talent, what you have affinities for, then get education, meaning actual knowledge, and then gain skills in that area and experience. That's how you reach the highest level of potential that you can ever have. So the same thing is true with hiring employees, and the same thing is true with systems. So when you find someone, so for example, I have an assistant who is absolutely amazing. I could never do what she does. It would be, I would probably kill myself after 5 days if I did what she's doing. But she's amazing at it. And one of the things that I would suggest is actually using a DISC test. And then when you find that, you can match that to a certain role that someone needs to play. If that's a mismatch, you're never going to make that work, ever. There's just no way. So for example, for me, I'm the entrepreneurial idea type. I have like 500 ideas every day. And the biggest, hardest thing for me to do is instead of like a little puppy that goes, oh, look at this. Oh, this is great. This is great. This is 15 ideas every day. Instead of say, okay, stay the course, focus on this one thing that you're really great at, stick to that. And that's really the success path. Now, the same thing comes to the same concept can be applied to systematizing the business as well. You find someone who's really great at what at what you need for that specific role. And once they are in it, then you simply ask them to create a manual so that someone else can just come in and basically sit there the first day, read through the manual and do what they do. And once you put all of those pieces together, they have to, but if you look at the whole idea of the systems theory says that if you take the best parts for example, a car, like I'm a car guy, everything, my life is about cars, materially at least, it's the only thing that matters to me. So if you take the best parts in the world, like best engine, best wheels from here, best whatever, and put them together, what are you going to get? You're going to get a piece of like basically a pile of junk because neither of the pieces works with the other. So the best systems are the ones where all the pieces together work in the most optimal, most efficient way. That's a great system. So the great system is not built from, these like Superman and super women, perfect employees who, no, that's unnecessary. And actually the quote on that's very applicable here is, if you take a high performer, like a really, really high performer, and put them in a bad system, they will fail. On the other hand, if you have mediocre performers, put them in a great system, it will work. And you can see the proof of this everywhere. Go to any McDonald's location. You can have very, low focused, very uninterested, low motivated, college kids or high school kids doing a great job because the system is perfected to that level that it doesn't really require much thinking. So the McDonald's location with 16-year-olds employed there works really well because the system is so great. And actually, if you look at biggest franchises in the world, those are the best business examples of how to actually create perfect systems, McDonald's being one of them.
So, it's interesting that we're talking along these lines because a lot of what I think about systems have to do with technology. And you're taking us back to some very fundamental understanding that it's the people and the process that the people use, and you can use the technology to support what they're doing, but it's not technology driven.
Well, correct. So here's what I would say. The first thing is there are obviously anything that can be done with automation or software or technology. It's good to use that. But in my mind, it doesn't matter how high or how well it's developed 10 years from now, 5 years from now, there will never be a replacement for human interaction. So for example, in today's business world, you can see that big companies like Nike, like Adidas, like Amazon, what are they trying to do? These are the biggest companies that can hire the best experts to create everything systematized. What are they trying to do? They're trying to create a human emotional interaction with you. That's what they're focusing on. And that's really, I look at this economy, and for example, all of these mom and pop stores have been complaining for decades that Walmart came and, just chased them out, basically pushed them out of business and all that. And there's a lot of truth in that big fish eat small fish. That's kind of the business world. On the other hand, I would say if I was a local mom and pop store, the one thing that no business could ever take away from you is that human interaction. And if you think about one of the best businesses in the world is Starbucks, which is $100+ billion a year business, what is it that built Starbucks into a successful company that they are today? What is it? It's the human touch. You go there to buy overpriced coffee. Why does everyone go to buy a $5 coffee when you can buy $1 coffee everywhere else? That's maybe, and the coffee purists will say, oh, Starbucks coffee is actually better. Maybe it is, but why would you pay? And most people who are spending $5, $6, $7 on a latte are not millionaires. They're people making average salaries. So they feel that expense every month, but they still go, why? Because of that human touch. You come in, and in your local Starbucks, they say, Angela, how you doing? How's your dog? How's that new car that you got? What's going on? So do you feel like a friend? You feel like you're in the family environment. And that's really the way to build a business. So if I was an owner of the local mom and pop store, I would focus just on that. I would say, yeah, maybe. So here's another example, REI, the outdoor store. They are absolutely phenomenal business. I love them and will be a customer for as long as I live and for as long as they are in business. When you go there, I feel like I'm a very outdoorsy type mountain biker. I love tents and all of these things being in nature. So I could go and buy every single thing that I buy in REI for half the price on Amazon. Doesn't matter. I would still go there physically because I like seeing people there. I like how they treat me. I like how we talk about all things, camping and all of this. So it's just that human touch that is really key. But I would say once you have that, bolt on to that, the technology piece, and then you can really skyrocket. Actually, a phenomenal book that I forgot the name of, I think it's called Unlimited Wealth. I read this many, many years ago, and it's written by a very, very smart guy who was the economic advisor of one of the presidents, I think. So in short, the book says the formula for wealth today is resources times technology. And this is really, if you think about what we're talking about, and resources means someone's knowledge and skills and that human touch that only a person, like a live person, can have. Bolt technology onto that, and then you can scale indefinitely. Have what is like whatever you consider wealth, you can get there. So that's really the formula, I would say, for not just building a great business, but also scaling it to any level that you want.
Okay. That's good. That's good. And that's a very unique way for me to look at it, because, you know, I wasn't really concentrating that much on, I mean, I got the customer service part, but you're really talking about the whole entire sort of customer journey
That's right.
for those companies that are, you know, built to last. So
Correct. And they don't have to be like that process and or system does not have to be specifically reserved for just big companies. For example, if you go to Nike or Amazon or anywhere that is a big company and you're interacting with them online, there's absolutely no reason not to do that as a solopreneur. You can do all of that with technology. Like you can have a Facebook Messenger chatbot set up in 2 hours from now. Like literally, if you have no resources to actually pay someone to do it for you, you can go on YouTube and find the chatbot messenger, you know, tutorial. And 2 hours from now, from the moment someone is listening or watching this video, they can have a chatbot running on their website. And I know that because I've done it. Years ago, I didn't have money to pay experts to do the things for me. So then I was like, okay, let me learn this chatbot thing. Everyone talks about it, and it's really great. It's an automated way to talk to customers, give them what they want, ask them questions. They can choose what they need help with. That, you know, leads them to give your resources to whatever problem they have. You can solve it, and it's all automatically happening without you doing anything. So absolutely everyone should be taking advantage of technology because it's gone really far and given us so much opportunity that we've never had before. This is truly the greatest time in history to be alive. We have more resources and opportunities and options now that are readily available to everyone with very little or even no investment, monetary investment at all. It just takes time, right? So you can either invest money or time. Usually you have one or the other. They're kind of like on a competing, you know, balancing scale. So regardless of where someone is, they can choose to invest one of the two. But the main point is really you can get a lot more done with technology than we could even 10, 20, not to say 50 years ago, for sure.
so great tips, great tips. You've talked about, you know, the fundamental piece of the person, the people that support your company, and sort of really understanding their process for getting the work done and adding on the technology to automate. Are there other ways we can create a system? You have any other tips? You have any tools that you use that you think are just like really fabulous?
I do, yes, especially when it comes to tools and technology that can help you. There are obviously in every field of the process, there are many options. You can find probably 10 different versions of the same operations or software that for something that you need done. For me, for example, Asana is probably the best project management software. At least it doesn't have to be the best. It's the one that I have used and I liked it. And I still do. Also, there's Zapier, where you can connect. Zapier basically connects different things so they talk to each other. Then, I mean, there's so many of them. But also, you can use Loom, Loom, for screen capture. So this is what I use, for example, for when I want to create an SOP. So this is actually a part of systematizing the whole process, right? So standard operating procedure, or SOP, simply means a set of rules or actions someone needs to take to get a certain task done properly. So when you're creating SOPs, ideally your business would be made of series of SOPs that are, for example, lead generation has 7 SOPs in my business, this. And then once we have generated a lead, we have someone in our network, meaning on our email list, then we have series of SOPs that we use in order to get that someone from just an email subscriber to someone who's actually engaged with our processes, meaning we send them when this is usually free resources, right? So we send them to our YouTube channel to watch videos, send them to our podcast to listen to podcasts, send them, for example, PDF documents, all kinds of things that are there to help them to achieve what they want or solve the problem that they have, right? And then finally, once they have been indoctrinated enough that they say, okay, this company is good for me, they know what they're doing, I like, know, and trust them, so I want to buy from them. And finally, we have an SOP for sales process. So how do they go from just being an email subscriber or someone in your tribe to actually being a customer? That is the most important thing, paying customer, because cash flow is truly the lifeblood of any business. And then once we have that, once they are a customer, then we want to convert them into a repeat customer. We want them to buy more things from us more frequently. And actually there's a phenomenal book that I would recommend to everyone to check out. It's called Up the Loyalty Ladder. And it basically talks about this journey of the person off the street who doesn't know you from Adam to being an advocate to your business. So there's, I think, 5 of those. Don't quote me on this, but it's basically suspect, prospect, customer, client, and advocate. Right? So suspect, someone who doesn't even know that your business exists. Prospect, when they do know it. Customer, they bought something from you once. Client or repeat customer, when they bought more than once. And then finally, they're an advocate, means they go everywhere and tell everyone about you. Right, so this process of systematizing it's really, I match my systematization process to this loyalty ladder, meaning we have an SOP for each parts of the process that creates the journey from someone to being a suspect, meaning that they don't even know about us at all, to all the way to advocates, where we have people walking around and telling everybody how great our business is. Right, so that's the way I would suggest looking at it.
So when you're talking about building a system and you're building out these SOPs now, are these just, I won't say just, but are they automation, taking people from one place to the next? Are they all automated pretty much? Where does the human touch come in?
It's a great question. Actually, most of that is automated. Most of it is done by different software and programs, and pretty much technology takes care of that. But I would say we try to add as much as we can into each layer of that process. We try to add human touch. So let me give you an example. In a lead generation process, I have my assistant reach out to people on LinkedIn, and this is just a cold outreach. And many people are against that, and cold outreach is bad. It's not at all, first, number one. Number two is it's all about how you look at it. I see it as there are a bunch of professionals and highly successful entrepreneurs and professionals who are struggling with their weight and they don't know the solution. Like we know that 8 out of 10 people are overweight, 4 out of 10 are obese in this country. So millions and millions of people out there need our help, but they don't know about us. If we don't do something to bring them into our world, they will never know about us because there's so much competition, and most of it, doesn't really, at least definitely in our case, it does not do it at the level that we do. I believe that what we do is the best, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be in business. So the cold outreach, for example, can be my assistant reaches out to people and a certain number of them respond back. My personal touch is whenever I can, a couple times a week, I would go in and personally talk to people who have just responded the first time. It can be my assistant most of the time, but it can also be me. So I go in there and actually start a real conversation. I say, let's say some, John or Julie have showed up, and I say, hey, John, how you doing? This is Amir. So what are you struggling with today? Is there anything I can help with right now? And this person would say, well, wait, is this assistant, or is this? I'm like, no, it's me. Like, if you want, what's your phone number? Let me give you a call. So I literally would give a call to a person who I don't know at all, as long as they're okay with that, and then start a conversation. Say, how can I help? Like, what can we do for you? And it doesn't have to be like most people would think, okay, you just get them on the phone to sell them something. Not at all. My approach there is, let me try to actually see what they need, if I can bring some value. And if they got value from it, that's great. Thank you so much. If you want, I'm going to send you this free PDF report that I've sent, or here's a link to my YouTube video where I talked about a specific thing that you asked me about. I answered that. Here's a YouTube video, and I send them the link for that. Or here's a podcast link on this specific episode. I talked about exact thing that you asked me. Here's what it is. And I can't tell you how grateful and thankful people are when you do that, because they see there's no agenda. I don't want anything from them. I'm not asking them to buy anything, to opt into their email anywhere. I just give them value. And that's just one example of what we can do to add that human touch to a system that could be 100% automated with technology and no human interaction at all. It can be, and a lot of times it is, and I highly suggest that everyone do create a process that is not dependent on you. Because when you have the freedom to not have to, make 500 calls a day, you have technology do it for you, then you can choose whenever you want, as much as you want, actually go in and do your personal interaction with them, focus on it, because you don't feel obligated for that. You just, like, for example, if I feel like it today, I'm just going to go and try to talk to 3 people and see if I can help them. If not, that's okay, no problem. My technology is still doing the process for me continuously. As we speak right now, my ads are running, my lead generation is working, everything is going without me. But then it's better to, as much as you can, actually go in and add a little bit of that, personal human touch.
Yeah, I really like that, Amir, because what seems to be happening and what I hear a lot of people complaining about is the fact that a lot of the companies have such sophisticated funnels and automation now that you never, ever can connect with the human being. And a lot of times the AI is not to the point where it actually interprets everything you're asking or you need correctly. So it's pulling up some of information that has nothing to do with, and at some point you just get so frustrated. You're like, I want to talk to a human being. In a lot of places, you never get to talk to a human being, and that is very frustrating for customers. So
I absolutely agree. And if you look at, for example, usually the worst example is the phone companies, right? So you call whatever big company and you are probably on the phone for 30 minutes before you actually talk to a real person. And if you think about how many, for example, the big phone companies, how many automations, technology, and artificial intelligence help they have, basically as much as it's possible to have, because they have the money and resources and everything else to put all that systems in place so that everything is automated. On the other hand, what is it that we as consumers are looking for and missing the most? Right. Exactly that human touch. I want to not be on the phone for 30 minutes to actually get to talk to a real person. So you're absolutely correct. I feel like the bigger the company is in this day and age, that human touch is over time, especially the bigger the company is, lost. And this is, I really, really believe this is the #1 advantage anyone can have. It's always been, really, in a history, if you look at history of businesses, the #1 advantage has always been customer service.
Right.
And another proof of that is, what's the biggest company in the world today? Amazon. I think they're the biggest company. If not, they're right there with Apple, but they're kind of changing, Apple, Amazon. But they're always kind of within the first 2, 3 maybe changes. But what's Amazon built on? One thing: customer satisfaction. That's it. They don't care about anything else. And me being a happy customer of Amazon for, I don't know how many, 15, 20 years, I can say that I will, based on how I was treated so far, I will be a customer of Amazon for life. And they will always do things that are unreasonably kind of generous, just unreasonably generous, where that company just lost money on what they did for you. Very quick example. A year ago, I bought a part for my car. Something happened. My car had a part that needed replacement. I ordered it, original German part. It just happened that Amazon is the reseller for that brand. And I bought the part, installed it. A year later, the part went wrong, like it died. And I started a warranty process on it through the actual company, not Amazon. The company did not handle it well at all, meaning they didn't respond to my phone calls, nothing. So just basically said, yeah, we opened the case and that's it. I'm like, hey, but my car is dead here. So what I did is finally, after like 2 weeks of trying to call them without any luck, I called Amazon and said, hey guys, I don't know if you can help with anything, but here's what happened. They're like, no problem, sir. We're going to send you a new replacement part, and it's going to be overnighted. So this is like Friday, 5 p.m. Saturday morning, the part was there.
Wow.
And this is Amazon sending me the new part. Has nothing to do with Amazon. It was just a reseller for that part. But they're like, yep, doesn't matter. They look at my history. They see that I buy a ton of things on Amazon. And that's just one example of how, and I bet you Amazon lost that money because Amazon getting that money back from that manufacturer of parts, good luck. Like that's not going to happen. There's no way. Those people don't even pick up the phone. So they're never going to get that money back. On the other hand, they just got a customer for life. So that's the Amazon was always in the long game, customer satisfaction, and really customer service always was, is, and always will be the point of differentiation between great business and average business and business that's going under, really. So customer service is where it's at. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, Amir, this has really been a great interview. I love the way you think about these systems and the layering of the tech with the high touch. I really love that, and sharing some of those tools that I'm sure people are Googling right now, those tools that you mentioned. You know, as we wrap up, one of the things I would love you to share is, it's a little off this topic, but when we talked earlier, you told me about how you ended up with your brand, the Alpha Entrepreneur. And can you just say a little bit about some of the assumptions you had about your target market, what you learned, and how you ended up pivoting? Because I think many of the viewers may have to pivot. You know, most of us have to pivot at some point. We don't typically start out and be 100% and we just know everything. You know, we're testing and learning and pivoting all the time. Do you mind sharing that?
I don't mind at all. That's actually a very, very good question. And I feel one of the most probably useful topics to talk about in this whole field of starting a business and actually making it a profitable, low hassle type of operation, is that the basics, which are, for me, I did not just come up one day and said, hey, let me have a brand of the Alpha Entrepreneur and focus on entrepreneurs. That was a very much a multi-year evolution. So it's the basic process that everyone should really start from is focusing on the 3 M's. So market, message, media. So market, who is your ideal customer? Focus only on them. Message, what is the offer? What is the message that you're telling them? So in my case, so an example, in my case, who is the market? Successful entrepreneurs and busy professionals. Okay, what's the message? I say if you're overworked, busy, and you spent years and years building either a career or business, and along the way, your health suffered, we have the solution. And then finally, what's the media, right? So we have the market, message, media. So those are the 3 parts of success in business. And media is basically just what platform or vehicle are you using to reach to these people. So in my case, for busy professionals, LinkedIn. If I'm reaching a specific type of millennial, it's Instagram, also YouTube, Facebook. Depending on what kind of offers you have, find where your market hangs out and use that media to reach them there, right? So, but to answer your question more kind of directly, I started as actually having I came to this country in 2008. I was 24 years old and had a degree from my country that did not work here at all. So I could not be a pharmacist here. And then I basically started working as a trainer and realized that if you work for someone and you charge $120 per hour and you get 30 and the club gets 90, you're not going to get too far. So I opened my own business. This was in early 2009, and basically built a local business, but it took years to do that. First, I was just like you said, I was focusing on everybody. So everyone is my client. It can be men, women, children, professional athletes, grandpas, and everyone else. That's absolutely wrong. You should not do that. That is, if you are trying to be everything to everybody, you end up just being nothing to nobody. So the completely counterintuitive approach is, instead of going wide, which everyone thinks if we go wide, we have a higher chance of picking up something. Instead, go very narrow, like figure out a very, very, very small chunk of the market that you can become an authority to, and then expand from there. So it's a completely counterintuitive approach, because we all think that, well, you know, what if I try to be everything to everybody? I have higher chances. No, in this crowded, overcrowded, over-communicated world, you do not have a chance that way. You're just going to suffer and spend many years and maybe decades trying to be that and realize it doesn't work, because the competition is everyone else is trying to be everything to everybody too. So in my case, actually the biggest difference for my local business happened after 5 years of struggling and working a lot. I basically almost went bankrupt and nothing worked. And that was because I was trying to be everything to everybody. And then I realized finally, okay, I really need to focus and hone in on who I'm focusing exclusively on. And it ended up being, I moved to Virginia, to the wealthiest zip code in Virginia, and focused only on the people I have infinities with, and built a tribe around that, built a very successful business from that. And then I took that same exact approach and applied it to my online business, which is the Alpha Entrepreneur brand as we know it today. And how that came about was simply because I said, okay, the way to succeed in a big oversaturated field, like for example, health and fitness, is to find a small niche within that big niche and then own that niche. So you basically create a new category that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that it doesn't exist before, didn't exist. You create a small category, own it because you created it. And in my case, I looked around everywhere online and everywhere where I could. There was no company that was focusing specifically and exclusively on successful entrepreneurs who are trying to get in shape. So I'm like, okay, that's my niche, because I'm an entrepreneur. We are, we think and operate differently than non-entrepreneurs. It's just a different way. Neither of them is good or bad. Neither of them is better. It's just different. And I said, okay, everything I say and write and live videos and everything I do is going to talk to them, to this market. And that's how I stumbled upon, I wouldn't say stumbled upon, that's how I focused on and determined what my market will be. And again, not surprisingly, when I focused on specifically successful entrepreneurs and became the brand name in that niche, today on Facebook and my huge network of Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube, when someone who is an entrepreneur goes into one of the big groups and asks, hey guys, I want to lose some weight, where should I go? There's dozens of people who go and tag me and say, this is the guy, or tag my brand and says, this is who you should talk to. So they send them my way. So, and it's not a coincidence. It was designed, it was by design. And that's one thing that I would suggest to our viewers as well. Figure out who you can serve the best, who is the very small part of the market. Create that customer avatar to the smallest detail that you can. If you can, you don't just say, I train men, or I work with men, or I help women do this. Focus way more than that. So for me, it is 25 to 40-year-old male entrepreneurs who have at least 6-figure, if not 7-figure business, who are trying to lose weight. That's my market. That's only who I talk to. Now, as we're becoming bigger and as our company grows, we are now, through our messaging, also focusing female entrepreneurs as well. So not that I didn't want that earlier, it's just that's not the way it works. If I'm going into the field and trying to compete with multi-billion dollar companies like Weight Watchers spends, whatever, a couple of million a month on ads. We can't compete with that. But what we can compete with is creating a category that we own. And then as over time, the company grows, that category takes a life on its own and starts expanding exponentially. And that's how we've actually gone from where we were years ago to where we are now. And that's really the path that I would suggest to everyone as well.
Yeah, I
start small.
That. Yeah, I love that, because it really just shows how you were very deliberate and intentional with the decisions that you made, and really keeping your pulse on your market. And so you kind of figured all of that out, and it just really worked for you. So Amir, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. A lot of good nuggets, good advice. very practical, exactly what people need. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been really great. I can't believe that, what, 45, 50 minutes have gone? Time flies when we're having fun.
Yeah, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And guys, I want to encourage you to stay tuned. There are lots more speakers for you to learn from. Take a look at the schedule and pick the ones that you really want to hear about, and make sure you listen to them when they're available on the summit. So stay tuned and happy hustle. This is Angela Heath with TKC. Thanks so much. Bye.